Councilmember Hussein.
Here.
Councilmember Carter. Here. Councilmember Pelivan-Oglu.
Present.
Councilmember Brown.
Present.
Councilmember Cost. Councilmember Garza. Councilmember Jackson. 7 members present. You have a quorum of council.
All right, that brings us to the meeting minutes from July 22nd, 2024. Councilman Spatafor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the minutes from July 22nd, 2024.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That takes us down to agenda item number 4. This is public comment on agenda items. If there are folks out in the audience that would like to make comment with regard to, we actually have one presentation that pertains to rate strategy for the Board of Water and Light for the next couple of years, and then we also have a resolution pertaining to an amendment. This is actually the 7th amendment to the return on equity agreement that we have in place with the Lansing Board of Water and Light. So if there's folks that would like to comment to either of those items, feel free to come on up to the podium, state your name for the record. We'll give you 3 minutes. This is on a first come, first served basis. Seeing none. That takes us to our first item. This is a presentation. I do believe we have Mr. Scott Taylor here, as well as Kelvin Jones. And then if Brina wants to come up, she's more than welcome as well. No? Okay. You guys want to come through the double doors, we'd appreciate it. Take a seat. Make sure your mic is on. Kelvin, you've been here a number of times. You know how it works. We appreciate you guys. As they are getting situated, committee members, you have in your packet, pull it up real quick, you have the Board of Water and Light rate change letter. That's from Chris Swope. We also have from our own charter, we have a couple of provisions that deals with, this is actually Article 5, Chapter Section 205, that deals with the rates and the way that the governance over the rates work. We have a 2024 Board of Water and Light proposed rate change letter and documentation. That's actually from your Board Secretary, Mr. Jones. We have a Finance Committee, or a set of Finance Committee meeting minutes, as well as some Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, and those are both from May 14th. And then I believe we have a presentation tonight. Is that correct?
That's
All
correct.
right. So we're going to turn the floor over to you two.
Excellent.
Welcome. Yep.
Kelvin Jones. I'm Director of Government and Community Relations with the Lansing Board of Water and Light. And to my right is Scott Taylor, our Director of Finance and Planning for the Board of Water and Light. And as you've indicated from the presentation that will take place today, Scott will walk us through that, and then we'll go to the resolution part of this as well. Scott, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks for having us tonight. I'll just walk through a little bit of the timeline and then next steps, and then we can take any questions that you may have on the rate strategy. So good evening. As you're aware, on July 3rd, we filed our proposed rate changes with the city clerk. That full packet is in your packet tonight. I saw that. That's the first step in our formal rate hearing process each time we have a rate change. Following that, on July 16th, a presentation was provided to our Finance Committee regarding the proposed rate changes. Then on August 2nd, the public hearing notice was published in the Lansing State Journal. And then the next steps from here will be on August 20th. We'll hold a public hearing at the BWL Rio Depot at 5:30 to take public comments and share a presentation on the rate changes. And then our board will convene on August 27th, and that board meeting will be held for a vote on the proposed rate changes. The proposed effective dates of any approved rate changes, as shown in the packet, would be October 1st of 2024 and October 1st of 2025. It is a 2-year rate proposal. The rate changes are primarily intended to cover increases in operating costs. If there's any particular questions I can ask, I know you have the full packet, at least 200 pages, so a lot of information in there, but we're happy to take any questions that you may have on the rate strategy.
So do you want to just very quickly, I believe that you are proposing increases across the board, correct?
Sure.
So for all utility
Yes.
types. Do you want to just talk to us really quickly about what those increases are and what that might net you all in terms of operating revenue?
Absolutely. So the electric increase proposal is 6.95% for October 2024, and then 6% for October 2025. And that's intended to generate, in the first year, approximately $20 million in additional revenues to cover increased costs, and in the second year, approximately $18.7 million. On the water side, 9.23% increase average revenues for the first increase October 1st, 2024, and then 9.16% October 1st, 2025. And those will generate $5 million the first year and almost $5.5 million the second year. In our steam utility, we're looking at a 9.75% increase in each of the years, October 1 again of 24 and October 1 of 25. The steam increases are expected to generate approximately $980,000 in additional revenue the first year and almost 1.1 in the second year. And then for our chilled water utility, 2% increase the first year, 1.5% increase the second year. And that's our smallest utility. That's expected to generate around $90,000 in additional revenue the first year, $70,000 in the second year.
And then in terms of, just for our edification, in terms of your steam and your chilled water, is that all commercial customers? Is it mostly commercial customers?
Mostly commercial customers. So chilled water is all commercial customers. Steam also mostly just a couple residential, but predominantly commercial customers.
Okay, I appreciate it. With that, do we have any questions or comments from the committee? Councilman Jackson.
Thank you. I just recall your timeline. You said that a notice of rate increase is sent out, and then there's a meeting with the finance committee. I guess my question is where does the original idea for the rate increase and what percentage come from if it doesn't first come from the finance committee?
It's primarily driven by our annual budget and forecasting process. That's where we look at all of our operating costs, our capital investment, and our key metrics, like our financial ratios and metrics. We put together a budget and forecast, and what's before you is very similar. The rate request is very similar to what was in our approved budget and forecast. Now, when our board approves the budget and forecast, they knowingly are not approving the rates at that time. There's a separate rate in hearing. But it's an indication of what the need is for rate increases, and it's typically been very close to what we come forward with the rate hearing. So in May, they would have seen the proposed rates that were in the budget and forecast, and then what we brought back to them in July was very similar. Most of the work we did between the two times was evaluating, kind of walking through the detailed breakdown and the cost of service study.
I guess just last, so since you're the finance person, is it mostly your forecast that they see in advance when they do the budget and vote, but then they know they have to later increase the rent to meet what they voted for in the budget? Is that?
Yes, I think that's fair. Yes. My team puts together it's an interdepartmental effort. It takes several months with the whole organization, meeting with all the managers and directors, and considering our strategic plan as well. But yes, when we put those forth, we separately disclose in the resolution for approval that they're not approving the rates, but it's an indication of the rate increases that will be necessary. So when that's presented, it's known roughly what we need. Now, if there was ever any change in the approved amounts, then we could revisit our forecasted capital and operating spend, and we would have to make adjustments. Welcome.
Thank you. Do we have other questions, comments? Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Vice President Hussein. Thank you all for being here. My question would be, working with constituents across the city, can you speak to, I guess, you've said this evening, because of operational costs, these rates have to go up. How are you strategically looking at doing everything you can so the rates don't go up versus saying, hey, maybe we wanted to spend and do this project A, B, and C, so now, the rates have to go up 10%. But what is, from your role, how you guys are really ensuring, or what controls you have in place to ensure the least amount of additional costs are being passed to the customer? Thank you.
Sure. That's a good question, and that's why I alluded to the fact that it's a multi-month process. So typically when we start our budgeting process, because we do a 6-year forecast, so when we roll forward a year, we kind of start with a baseline of what had we previously anticipated forecasting for that year. The departments all put together their budgets. We meet with each of them individually, and we compare their requests against what had previously been approved. If there are any increases, we have a justification process whereby they need to explain why they need additional amounts. And oftentimes the asks are greater than what our budget allows. And so then there's the healthy pushback from the finance side, looking at our metrics, making sure that we can meet financial metrics of what we have planned out. And so we meet with each department, and we have several iterations of budget cuts, as you will, to get back down to the amounts. And then outside of that, our normal business process, right? We have a very robust procurement process where we do a lot of bidding, require bids, choose the best evaluated bid, strategic planning meetings, to business case analysis. We do. My team does a lot of business case analysis when ideas are brought forward. So sorry if this is more than you wanted, but we do a lot of analysis throughout the year and in the budget process to help make sure. The first thing we do is evaluate our costs and our spending. The last lever we pull, if you will, is rate changes.
No, thank you so much, and that's what I was looking for. So thank you for explaining that a little bit further for our constituents.
You're welcome.
Councilman Cost.
Thank you, Vice President Hussein. Do you know what the average, I don't know what the average usage is for residents, what kind of an increase we could see per bill, moving forward October 1st?
Sure, another great question. So our average residential customer uses approximately 500 kWh per month, and our average water customer uses approximately 5 CCF. That's a measure of the volume. So the electric average bill is approximately $96. So they would expect to see about a $7 increase, and our average water customer bill is around $44. They could expect to see just under a $4 increase. Some of our customers are electric and water, so between the two, about a $10.95 increase this coming this October.
So my math I did at home was accurate. I was looking at that earlier. And we still are significantly cheaper than Consumers Energy, correct, for electric?
Yes, we track our residential rates and make sure that we target to make sure that we are below there. And yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the target has been referenced in the past as 10%. Correct?
That's
Is
correct.
that where we're at
Yes.
now?
Yes. And we ebb and flow over time, but then basically we'll make plans for corrections if we're not meeting our target.
Okay, I appreciate it. Do we have further questions, comments? All right, since we have you, we're going to move down to item 6. This is discussion action. This is a resolution for the Board of Water and Light Return on Equity Agreement Amendment Number 7. Some folks actually at this dais were involved in the latest amendment, the 6th Amendment, back in 2022. We actually entered into the initial Return on Equity Agreement back in 1992. It has been amended 6 times since, mostly for extensions and changes within percentage formulas, that type of thing. But there is a new amendment being contemplated, and that, would begin July 1st, past July 1st. It would expire June 30th. Return on equity would equal 6% of the total budgeted water and light operating revenue and exclude inter-utility sales. And for my committee colleagues, in your packet, we do have the proposed contract between the Board of Water and Light and the City of Lansing in terms of the 7th Amendment. We have attachments, a series of exhibits and things of that nature that speak to past amendments. We have the return on equity minutes from the Board of Water and Light. It's a great conversation. I appreciated those minutes being included. We have the return on equity resolution that the Board of Water and Light Board of Commissioners approved. And then we have a resolution that this body needs to vet with regard to that 7th Amendment. Mr. Jones, Mr. Taylor, do you have anything to add to this in terms of how we arrived at the 6%, what this means for the City of Lansing, what this means for you in terms of your ability to continue to grow your customer base? This goes on.
I can add just a couple of highlights. So the current return on equity agreement, as you mentioned, expired June 30th, 2024. That's why it's up for renewal. The primary intent of the amendment is simply to renew the agreement. But there are a few key aspects of the renewal that I think may be worth noting for you. One is it does maintain the 6% rate of return on revenue, which is consistent with common practice. However, the revenue base is now going to be based on budgeted revenue rather than actual revenue. That is expected to assist both the city and the BWL in planning and forecasting, because it won't be subject to the kind of the fluctuation of revenues. As you know, this year we were off our revenue targets due to generation, and so that is expected to help out. It extends the agreement for one additional year, as you indicated, which will take us through fiscal year 2025. And then one more important note is it actually amends fiscal year 2024 to align with the new calculated methodology based on budgeted revenues rather than actual revenues.
So, which means bottom line for the city of Lansing is what?
Additional return on equity for fiscal year 2024.
Do you know the amount?
Approximately 1.9 million.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. All right, fantastic. Do we have questions, comments? Councilman Spatafor.
Oh, two questions really. One, first, thanks for being here. One, why just 1 year? Why are we? If we only met it 6 times in the last 30 years, now we're on this annual amendment kick.
Sure. I think, and I see Jake is here if he wants to speak, but I think primarily these are revenue driven, and we have a lot of load changes right now and a lot of things under construction. So it just seemed prudent. One of the discussions we have every year is what do our forecasts look like? What do things look like when we're agreeing on this? We just thought with all of the projects currently underway and the expected changes in our load, our revenue, that it made sense to just go with 1 year this time.
Okay, and reevaluate in a year.
Yes.
Anything to add, Jake?
Nope, I nominate Scott Taylor to be my spokesperson for the rest of the night.
No is a complete sentence. And then you said it's based on budgeted revenue versus actual revenue. So you've made that adjustment for FY24. Are your budgeted revenues inclusive of the rate increases you just spoke of?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Jackson.
Thank you. I guess when you say budgeted revenues, isn't it usually like City Lansing goes over the operating amount usually and has to come back with an amendment and say we need to change stuff? Historically, has Board, Water, and Light went over so that if it was more than the operating budget, more than 6% because of actual, is that like a historical trend where it's actually more than 6%?
I would say in an aggregate over time, yes, it's averaged slightly above our budget. We try to budget conservatively so that we can, be sure to meet our financial targets. This year, however, was a different year, just because we had generation issues, and so that was why we fell below our target. But again, that's also why the 1 year extension as well.
Councilman Spatafor.
Jake, or perhaps BWL folks, what is the total estimated what is that 6% net the city in 24 and expected for 25?
For 24, we're expecting around $26 million, plus the adjustment from last year, which in our books was booked this current year, for a total of 26.2. For FY25, we're looking at just above 28 even.
Thanks.
Councilman Brown, and then Councilman Cost.
Thank you. Have we talked about, I know some years, as you've indicated, have been over and some have not, but have we talked about in this new agreement that you're saying it's maintaining 6% budgeted versus actual? Are we participating in the upside if the actual is significantly more?
No, the way that the agreement is stated now, it is based on budgeted revenues, and it amends the prior year to align with the budgeted revenues as well. So for forecasting and planning purposes, both the upside and downside, I guess if you want to refer to it that way, are out, and it's a more predictable amount.
Yes. In a sense, this is de-risking both the City of Lansing side, particularly for the past fiscal year, which is just resolved, but also gives the Board of Water and Light a potential boost in the following year as we see a lot of new construction and particularly projects like the Ultium plant coming into more full production they could realize the entire sum if they were to exceed their expectations above and beyond what is budgeted, which would still even be slightly above what we budgeted internally. So overall, I characterize this as a fairly win-win for the both of us.
So Jake, so if they budget for $20 million, 6% is whatever that equals, but they make $40 million, the City of Lansing would not participate in that additional $20 million?
That is correct. We'd be very happy for them. Yeah.
That's not very funny.
I'm sorry.
Okay. But in the past, we've had it where, what has been the past agreement for everybody?
Yes, and so I think it's reflected in some of the text of the whereas clauses as you look in the agreement. So I believe in the broader package, we included a copy of each agreement, but there's different components for different years where certain terms changed, transfers of property and so forth. There was a amendment number 3, which had a annual payment of about 6.1% of retail and wholesale sales of chilled water, electric, steam, heat, and water utilities. There was a later agreement that changed that to just a fixed amount, so it was $23.1 million for a year and then 2 years of 25. The subsequent 2 fiscal years, it was 6.0%, but rather than being based off of sales, was a figure of total operating revenues less interutility sales. The advantage being these are numbers that could be directly pulled out of the financial audit, and so it's has a more clear audit trail. And then we went back to a variable rate based on that 6% with that agreement, and then the subsequent agreement is still the 6% off of the basis of operating revenues less the interutility sales, which is more or less internal service charge, Board of Water and Light paying for the Board of Water and Light's utilities, and then for this current year.
So would you say that, excuse me, so like in the past it's been fixed like 25 million. So what was the reason if you say, for example, if its budget is 6% and it's $30 million, we're going to get, $10 million a year?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what you're saying now, because whatever they put as the budget times 6% is really a fixed cost, not going back and forth. Is that, I'm trying to understand why we're making these changes.
Yeah, so overall, this is about a stable projection through a period of uncertainty. We know there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of expectation, but we also know that with that, there's a lot of particular timelines, and we'd rather be able to tell you exactly what you're going to get this upcoming year, while also maintaining that basis of being tied to their overall revenues. So when they're going to be doing better, we're going to be doing better. If they're doing worse, we're going to share in that. But on a one-year basis, just really, I can tell you exactly what we're going to get this upcoming fiscal year, and we can feel at ease about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Cost.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. Excluding intra-utility sales, that is just what you guys are using, not the, selling of electric or water to other utilities.
Correct. Intra-utility sales are just what we sell to ourselves, so when our water utility uses our electric and vice versa.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Most of the questions that I had were actually answered. I struggled a little bit. 2013, we entered into, so look through the exhibits, obviously. Entered into a 5-year agreement that saw the board pay the city 6.1% of its revenue, and that was, my understanding was wholesale as well as retail sale, right? So we're looking at utility customer, or I should say utility to customer, but regardless of 6.1%. Understood why we went to the 23 million, then the 25. I think it was 25, maybe consecutive years. But even at that point, if the board did better, we were rewarded, because I think there was like a $490 million. There was some number in there that if you guys exceeded that in operating revenues, then we would get a kickback as well. Struggling a little bit. I know that the mayor, first of all, from the meeting minutes, whether it be finance, committee of the whole, it sounds like top brass is pretty certain you guys are going to beat your projections. Very clear. You assuage the concerns of the committee over and over and over. And so they've walked away feeling like they got one heck of a deal for the utility. I struggle. I know the mayor first offered 8%. Is that correct? You wanted 8%.
I wasn't privy to the discussion, but I understand that is
I'm pretty sure that was the
said.
administration's
Yes.
offer.
Yeah.
You all countered with 6%, and I think it was potentially 6% gross. And then he countered with 6% budget. Is that correct?
The gross, I think, was intended to be actual. So there was a reference to budget and a reference to gross. I think by gross, what was meant was actual. It was in a discussion with the city that I was part of, where it was determined that it was preferable to use the budgeted figures because of the reliance that our revenue projection has on the wholesale market. And like I said, when we have the generation or if there are pricing changes, there's exposure there. So due to that exposure, that was why a premium was put on associating with the budgeted amounts rather than actual results.
Yeah. I just, again, I struggle, looking at the minutes, and I think you're hearing kind of across the board a consistent sentiment up here. We have to, and I know you all know this, when we do well, you do well, and vice versa. We're struggling when we look at revenues and we look at our ability to provide public services to both our residents and our commercial customers, if you will, in your terminology. We struggle, and when we look at property taxes, we have to do everything we possibly can to protect and enhance our property values so that we can realize those gains in terms of, or I should say, gains associated with those property value increases. Second revenue stream is income taxes, so we as a council need to do everything we possibly can to bolster, support economic development, investment, job growth. State revenue sharing, right, is the third. It's particularly when it comes to statutory, we need to really be doing what we can as a council to advocate to the state for additional dollars. But then that fourth revenue stream is return on equity. And we need to make sure that as you're growing and your customer base is growing and that we are receiving enough essentially from the utility to ensure, and again, we're able to provide better public safety and better public services. That makes it much more attractive for folks to come in. That helps in terms of your customer base growing. And I just feel like when I look at these minutes and I look at the administration's offer and counter offer, I feel like we got our butts kicked a little bit in that room, frankly, I'll be honest. So I struggle a little bit with that. I don't totally understand, frankly, at one point we were doing the wholesale and the retail, and now we're just doing the retail, if you will, backing out. I don't totally understand that. I'll certainly get with you all and try to understand that better. I do understand that this is something that we agreed to back in 2022, and essentially what we're doing is just extending it a year. But I'm just going to be honest with you because I'll be here next year. I do expect. I understand what compromise is, right? Mutual gives and gets. And again, when I read through those minutes, I think we gave more than we got. So with that said, are there other questions, comments? The only other thing I guess that I have for the city attorney's office, this expired June 30th. Why are we just looking at this? The last agreement?
Well, I can't speak to the logistics of why you're just getting this, but the amendment would be to go back, retroactively change the prior year or the final year of that agreement, and then I think there's one more year added on to it, but none of that really affects anything because... No,
and I understand that. I guess what I'm
Yeah.
saying is if the Sixth Amendment expired June 30th, then we probably should have vetted this prior to June 30th, correct?
Yep, we would have liked to get it to you. There was some awkward timing in that the previous council meeting was on the 22nd. Board of Water and Light met on the 23rd, so it'd be awkward for us to approve it before they approved it. And so ultimately, it doesn't really affect the substance of it. We apologize for it being at you post the end of the fiscal year.
All right, thank you. If there are no other questions, no other comments, Councilman Spatafor.
Mr. Vice President, I move the resolution for the Board of Water and Light Return on Equity Agreement, Amendment number 7.
All right, there's a motion on the floor for the discussion. Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have any other business before the body, folks? We appreciate you all being here, truly. And just very quickly before I adjourn, do see Maria in the audience and Brina. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you all and the work that you all do. I was just actually, Kelvin, talking to somebody yesterday on the phone, and I said, every time I engage CATA or every time I engage the Board of Water and Light, and I know I was, not completely complimentary in terms of this process, but you all do excellent work in terms of responsiveness, community and constituents and ratepayers, and so I certainly appreciate you guys. Okay.
Thank you.
With that being said, and no other business before the body, we are adjourned at 6:30.